Now is California Congressman Adam Schiff, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Welcome back, Congressman. It's always good to see you. I've got a bunch of questions for you, but I would love you to react to that which we just heard from Steve Scalise this morning. Watching him pause when asked merely to confirm that Joe Biden is the duly elected president. It's like I was watching the wheels turn in his mind to figure out how to very delicately tap dance how to answer that question. What did you see and hear there?
Well, exactly the same thing, and that is this is the number 2 Republican in the House, and he has difficulty saying that Joe Biden was elected in a free and fair election because he doesn't want to antagonize Donald Trump and his base, notwithstanding the fact that Donald Trump incited a violent attack on our Capitol. These Republican leaders are still in his thrall. He, of course, Steve Scalise made the same pilgrimage Kevin McCarthy did to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, to once again pledge fealty to Donald Trump. They have tied their wagon to this amoral, now former president. And it's a terrible thing for the Republican Party, but it's also a tragedy for the country. We need 2 functional parties. Right now, we only have 1 functional party and a cult of personality around Donald Trump.
It is extraordinary. Let's get to the new reporting that riot investigators are right now looking into whether Trump allies Roger Stone and Alex Jones played actually a role in organizing the violence. Let's take a listen to what your colleague Stacey Plaskett told MSNBC earlier. Here it is.
As for what this new report is showing with regard to Roger Stone and other allies of the president, I think it's solidifying that, in fact, the president was, in fact, not only an instigator, but a planner of the attack on January 6th.
Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, and I think it's certainly appropriate to be looking at the role that the president's close supporters and friends and confidants like Roger Stone, conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and others played in inciting this. If you believe Alex Jones, also financing the rally on January 6th. And, you know, the whole Stop the Steal campaign that persuaded millions around the country of this big lie being pushed out by the president that the election had been rigged or that Donald Trump actually won in a landslide. These are 2 major proponents, advocates, architects of that big lie. And I think it's important to look into their role, both in terms of just doing the postmortem and understanding how this violent attack came about and how people were radicalized, but also because the Justice Department has to prosecute hundreds of people that were involved in that a violent attack, and knowing what motivated them will be part of that case.
Do you have any hard intel yet, or at least suspicion that potentially Roger Stone spoke with the president in that period between when the president in December tweeted what a wild day this was going to be as he was calling on his supporters to come to the Capitol, and the actual day itself?
I don't, but if you look at the president's conduct in the last weeks and months leading up to the election and in the aftermath, increasingly the more respectable to the degree there were any people around the president started leaving the administration, refusing to represent his views, he gravitated to more fringe characters like Rudy Giuliani. But it's also, very likely he gravitated to longtime and fringe confidants like Roger Stone, someone who lied to Congress to protect him in the Russia investigation, was convicted and later pardoned by the president, and others like Alex Jones, who gave Donald Trump as a candidate, as a president, this huge platform to push out his lies and conspiracy theories. So these are birds of a feather. All of these individuals, the president, Jones, Ali Alexander, Roger Stone, in that they have no compunction about lying, don't care what it does to the country. And so it makes sense to explore their roles fully, each of them.
As I know you're aware, for weeks now, QAnon has been telling its supporters that Donald Trump could somehow still be inaugurated on March 4th. I mean, it is, I have to say, laughable that we even have to mention this. But is this mentality why the National Guard is still on duty protecting the Capitol? Why there remains security fencing?
I think it's part of the reason. I think that law enforcement will say that they don't have specific threats against the Capitol, and that may be true, but there are a lot of general threats circulating online. This is one of them that, QAnon has had to adapt because their predictions have all turned out not to be true, not surprisingly. There wasn't this, massive event that they thought where, the military and others were going to come and put down the Biden administration. Donald Trump was going to continue on in power. Each date that QAnon predicts that comes up and the events they predict don't come to pass, they have to continue to move the goalposts. So now the goalposts are moved to this March date, and no one wants to be caught flat-footed again. So, yes, I think that the National Guard, our other security agencies, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, they're not taking any of this lightly, including these continuing conspiracy theorists circulated among QAnon believers.
Well, I want to thank you for answering the question. I'm personally apologizing that we had to address something so utterly absurd. Let's move on to this because it's serious stuff. Iran, as President Biden's administration is announcing, yes, it's open to talks with that country. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says this may be the best chance at rejoining the nuclear deal. So let's take a listen to what he said.
One of our concerns right now is that Iran is presently threatening to move even further out of compliance, to refuse to cooperate with the International Atomic Energy Agency in the work it's trying to do to ensure that nothing in Iran's program is being used for weapons purposes. So I think the first order of business here would be for the Iranians to take the decision to stop the process of moving further out of compliance. And then I do believe that there is a diplomatic pathway to getting to an ultimate agreement.
So if Iran perceives a now more amenable presence in the White House, do you think Iran becomes more compliant or more defiant?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is Iran trying to improve its negotiating position before it ever sits down at a table with Europe or the United States to try to negotiate a return to compliance with the agreement. So you see them threatening to turn off the video surveillance of the nuclear facilities. You see them increasing the degree of enrichment of uranium to 20%. All of this they hope will give them more leverage in these talks. They know the Biden administration is interested, I think as they should be, in trying to resume the agreement. So they're trying to leverage it in every way they can. It does show you, Alex, the fallacy of the Trump strategy, which was to unilaterally renege on the agreement. That's what the United States did before Iran started to renege, and then have really essentially no backup plan under the expectation that I don't know what, that by the United States leaving and reimposing some sanctions on Iran, that Iran was going to continue to comply nonetheless, or even go beyond that. There was never a plan B after plan A failed in the Trump administration. So the Biden administration, unfortunately, has inherited this mess. I think they are soundly trying to find a diplomatic solution because the military options are unthinkable, and that puts us where we are. But I think Iran right now is merely trying to increase their leverage prior to any discussion. So
in trying to decipher a bit of this mess, once the U.S. pulled out of the Iran deal, of course, many said that Iran would then have license to restart its nuclear program without being held to any sort of an agreement. Is there any clear evidence that Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon today than it was 4 years ago? Because there always seems to be reports that they were right there on the cusp of it. And if they have not gotten a nuclear weapon in the last 4 years, why not?
I don't think there's any question then they are now closer to a nuclear weapon potentially than at any point in the last 4 years, because they resumed enrichment. They put back online more higher producing centrifuges. We have less scrutiny of their process than we did. There are still two timelines to the bomb. There's a timeline of enriching the material, which has now been shortened to a matter of a few months. And then there's a timeline to develop the mechanism of the bomb. And we have less visibility, frankly, on that second timeline. We certainly have to do everything we can to train our intelligence resources on that problem set so that we understand exactly where Iran is. But there's no question that the Trump administration decision to leave the deal has put us in a more dangerous position, has essentially unshackled Iran once again to go down the path towards a nuclear weapon, and that makes us far more vulnerable.
All right, Congressman Adam Schiff, my friend and fellow Californian, always good to talk with you. Thank you so much.